All right, guys. So I think we have left the last people to log in. So first of all, welcome all. We'll kick off this webinar today, where we will discuss and give you some insights into how we can measure marketing. That's probably one of the toughest agendas to put up on a webinar and tell people you have the exact right way of measuring marketing, because you all know that's not really possible, right? But we'll give a good suggestion onto that today, and I have a really special treat for you guys with a SiriusDecisions joining the webinar today. So welcome to you, Isabel. Unfortunately, you can't reply to me yet because I've muted you, along with the rest of you. So you're all now put into to muted session. A little bit of housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded, which means that if you find this fantastically interesting and you think somebody else in your organization should see this, or you wake up during the night and thinking, I need to see that webinar once again, you will have a link afterwards where you can re-see the webinar once again. So it's being recorded. Furthermore, you also have the option of asking questions as we go along in your little webinar app. There's a question spot, so you can write questions in that, and we'll see if we can answer them as we go along, or else we'll keep the lines open once the presentation has ended, and then we'll take questions at that time also. So let's try to kick this off. First of all, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Lasse. I am one of the owners of the company called Increase. I've worked with sales and marketing organization for the last 8-10 years, helping them align, helping them document the results, and really trying to get effectiveness out of the way we drive sales and marketing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on myself or the company that sorry about that, so kill that, or the company that we drive. I just want to highly mention a few things so you know who you're actually speaking to. As I can see, there's a number of people here which are not our existing customers. So we're about 35 people, and we do nothing else than work with what we call a technology-enabled contact strategy. So how can we really align sales and marketing to be able to document the ROI and do that with the supporting technology? We've specialized ourselves in Oracle's Marketing Cloud and worked with that technology for quite a number of years, and are the highest certified partner in the Nordics, and all of these great things, awarded specialized partner of the year, and a lot of nice and funny things. But today we're not here to speak so much about us, but to everybody's big surprise, companies like ourselves, we have a lot of logos and we work with a lot of companies. So I just want to make sure that that you know that the companies we work with are medium-sized enterprise customers in the Nordics, and we've had a success over the last years, growing our business quite rapidly. But enough about us. I don't want to spend time on that since we have limited time today, and we have a really interesting topic. So if you want to know more about us, feel free to go to our website, increasegroup.com, or SC or NO or Danish site. We have a blog where we post a lot of interesting articles related to this topic. So do look at our blog and see if you can find some interesting articles. You'll find more than I think 80-100 different articles that we've written over the last couple of years. So with that said, let's try to frame a little bit about what we're going to discuss today. So we know that this one keeps popping up. We'll do like this. Sorry about that, guys. And delete. So here we go. So let's try to frame a little bit on what we're actually talking about today, because we meet a lot of companies in mid-size and enterprise customers. We've spent a lot of the last years as sales and marketing organizations really trying to set ourselves up as a lean, mean sales machine in the B2B processes naturally. And I think we've invested a lot of money in sales training, or we've invested a lot of money in CRM platforms, or whatever it might be. But the really interesting thing here is that we might have set ourselves up as a lean, mean sales machine, but actually the surroundings has really changed. So we have to discuss with ourselves and internally in the organizations, are we actually set up correctly to match the customer's buying processes today? Now, if you've been on a webinar on an event before, you will have seen somebody put up slides that says everybody's buying from an online perspective today and are doing search online, etc. So I'm not going to waste your time on that. But just to think about the consequences of the changed buying processes is that we have not aligned ourselves yet with how the customers actually purchase. And that's one of the key reasons that documenting the effect of what we're actually doing is really, really difficult. I'm going to try to play a little story for you guys that we often see, and maybe that's something you can recognize from your own business. Play a little story for you guys on a board meeting that could happen in your company, like a Monday afternoon, right? So let's say that the marketing has launched a new product campaign, and you're the marketing manager, and you have to go in now and present the results of this fantastic campaign that you've generated, right? So the CMO comes in and is about to present this. So she or he starts out with, we've launched our new website and it looks really good, and our new Facebook page is also ready to launch as a part of our new social strategy. As you know, we launched this product campaign. We sent out communications to 5,000 people. We had fantastic open rates, and click to open was also really impressive. And overall, I think we generated about 1,000 leads to sales, and we're really happy with that. Now, in that meeting, our CMO or CEO will also be, right? But he's one of those guys, and if you're in marketing today, the worst question you can get from a guy like that is, well, that sounds great, nice looking emails or whatever it might be, but listen, Mrs. CMO, how much revenue did we actually generate out of this specific campaign? Well, it's a little bit difficult to say, because we haven't gotten any feedback from sales yet, right? We generated these 1,000 fantastic leads, and we sent them to sales as we agreed. So we could maybe ask Soren, who's also in this meeting, which is the sales director. So we forwarded all leads to him, and as the CEO, he's a nice guy. So he says, Soren, let's hear about the revenue you generated out of this campaign. And this is not to be tough on sales guys or anything like that, and it's not on purpose that this sales director has a little bit of a lean back attitude. but he actually says, well, I can't really tell you how much revenue we've done. I have to get some feedback from my salespeople, and I don't have that right now. However, what I hear from them is that the leads wasn't that very good. They didn't have a lot of good quality in it. And Mr. CMO, to be honest with you, the leads don't really generate any revenue directly. We're already in dialogue with the customers, and it's just kind of supporting some of the cases. We know the cases that are out there already. But by the way, could you send me the emails that you've sent out? I would like to see it. And if you were the CMO, you get a little bit frustrated now, right? A little bit of tension in the room. So CMO goes, but listen, Søren, didn't you conduct a follow-up day? I thought you guys were calling out to these leads. We agreed on that. I simply can't understand how you can say that the leads had low quality. It's one of the best performing campaigns we've ever had. So Soren goes, well, that's just not what I hear. What the salespeople tell me is that it's not generated anything at all. And this is naturally a thought out case that would never happen in your company. But in the end, the CEO says, listen, guys, stop that mess. I need to know how much money did we spend on this campaign? What revenue did we generate? Did you follow up on the leads? Is there any real quality in these leads? You two sit together, figure out how we can document the results from the investments that we're making. Now that could be a case in a company somewhere out there. Naturally not with you guys, but some of the companies we meet here and there. And that's really the framing of what we will be discussing today. Because the issue here is, in this little story, is naturally sales and marketing are not aligned, which makes it really, really, really difficult to document the results of what marketing is actually doing. So we call it the 12 rounds of heavyweight boxing between sales and marketing. Because in general, marketing has a perception in the most companies that we meet that we deliver quality leads, but sales never follow up, and if they follow up, we never get any feedback, right? And if you ask salespeople, they will say, just because somebody clicked on a link in an email or submitted a form or whatever it might be, that's not a lead, guys. Don't send that crap to me, because it's not customers that are in the market. And the issue here for most organizations is that we are not aligned as sales and marketing. So what is actually a lead? Now, what does a customer have to do before it qualifies as a lead? And what is the processes that we need to support to be able to manage those leads? And that is actually what we're going to discuss today, because being able to document the results of marketing demands a certain level of processes and structure. And today we're going to introduce you guys to a framework that can really set the scene on how you can be able to document the results of marketing and really optimize the sales and marketing investments that you guys are making. So with that said, we have a fantastic treat for you guys today. We have the pleasure of having Isabel with us today from SiriusDecisions. And Isabel, let me just open up for your line. You should be able to speak now. And Isabel is from SiriusDecisions, a fantastic global research and advisory company that I know, Isabel, you're just going to spend a few seconds on introducing SiriusDecisions yourself also. I'll hand over the presenter rights to you, and Isabel, you can take it from here, and you should be able to present.
Thank you very much, Laz.
There you go. I hear you fine also. So scene is all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can see my slides now. And thank you for dialing in this morning. It is a pleasure to meet everyone, although remotely, but hopefully we'll have a chance to meet face-to-face sometime in the near future. So as Lasse says, I have the pleasure of speaking with you today about the SiriusDecisions Demand Waterfall. But before I get started, let me just tell you a little bit about who SiriusDecisions is, just to try and put this into context. So we are a leading research and advisory firm helping sales, marketing, and product folks actually try and drive actionable, intelligent, transformative initiatives within their companies. And we have around 1,000+ clients across the U.S. and Europe. And so how do we help people? Well, through a collaboration of different items. We can share best practices, and we do that through a lot of the research and conversations that we do with all of our clients, as well as other organizations out there who are leading the way. We also provide a fact-based benchmark to companies that is a direct comparison between them and their peers. So we have a very large database, and so we can help people try and compare their performance rates in terms of lead progression, lead conversion rates, return on marketing investment, compared directly to peers who are in their industries, in their countries, and share their go-to-market models. And so that's important in order to help them try and understand where they can continue to improve. We provide advice. Also, we have
sorry about that. I have one attendee that has a little bit trouble of hearing you. Maybe you could go a little bit closer to the speaker. I hear you fine, however. So it's okay. Please continue.
No problem. I hope that's a little bit better for you. Let me continue, but by all means, please let us know if that's not improved the audio. As I was saying, I think we can also help people through the different models and decision frameworks that we provide, again, based on helping companies be more effective and efficient. And what we'll be talking about today, the Demand Waterfall, is one of the cornerstone models that we actually help people with. We also help people with peer-to-peer collaboration and development of their teams through different training. Okay, that's enough about SiriusDecisions. Let's start with our presentation for today, and I'll start with a really funny cartoon that I think is a great follow-on from the story that Lasse presented. And as you heard from the distress that sales and marketing were in that scenario when the CEO held them to account, it is important for sales and marketing to have that shared view of what makes a really good lead. Because if they don't have a shared view, as in Lasse's example, what happens is a breakdown of communication and additionally a breakdown of leads. So what we'll be talking about today, hopefully we'll tackle these issues by giving you an understanding of the foundational elements of the demand waterfall. And as I said, that's a best-in-class process, and it's designed specifically to drive that alignment between sales and marketing and create a shared view of performance between them so they can understand exactly what's come into the funnel, how it's meeting quality requirements, and then at what speed it's progressing through that funnel as well. But let's kick off with a bit of a polling question. Lasse, if you don't mind giving me a hand. What I'd like to know from you is, how well do you know the demand waterfall, or some similar type of marketing funnel that you may be familiar with? So the options can be you have already adopted the demand waterfall, or maybe a version of the demand waterfall, another type of funnel. Maybe you're just at the beginning of a demand waterfall rollout, or maybe you're in the camp that says, never heard of the demand waterfall, have no idea what you're talking about, I just focus on getting leads in the door. So let me know by clicking on the particular answer, which camp do you sit in?
We have just about 60% answered now, and Isabel, what you will see is if this was a verdict, I think you will have a clear showing here. So we have almost everybody answered now, 75%. So with respect for time, we're going to close it off here, and because I think the vote is unanimous, as you will see.
Okay, perfect. What is a demand waterfall? Then you know what? I think you're in the right place. But we do have a couple of folks who are starting to get on the road to actually showing or to implementing the demand waterfall. So that's good as well. Hopefully, we'll give you some good tips and tricks towards the end in terms of that implementation to try and head off some pitfalls. So with that said, let's get on to the demand waterfall. So the demand waterfall really, it's fairly logical when you think about it, but I'm going to break it down into 4 main phases today. And then as we talk a little bit further, I'm going to break each phase down into multiple stages and then create that full vision for you by the end. So the 4 stages that we start off with are inquiry. And inquiry is where you're really, you're seeding demand, you're creating awareness, and you're driving leads to or inquiries to come into your company. The second stage is marketing qualification. And marketing qualification is where you do all of the work that helps you understand if that inquiry is actually a very strong lead. Is it a fit for your organization? Is it the kind of target profile that you want to talk to? And then secondly, are they ready to actually enter an active sales cycle from a high-level perspective? So is it a good quality lead? The third stage is the sales qualification. And so at that point, you send it across to sales. So this is the handover between marketing and sales. And sales has the opportunity to look at that lead, determine whether or not it's of good enough quality for them to focus on, and then also determine whether or not now is the right time to put that lead into an active pipeline, an active sales cycle. And the fourth section is everything that takes us to hopefully winning that business and having a close-won deal. So those are the 4 main phases of the demand waterfall. Now let's break down each stage into its components. And the most important aspect of this process are these handoff points between the phases and the teams. So let me spend just a moment on that. And that's really what you'll see denoted by the red boxes. So at the inquiry phase, when you get an inquiry that comes in, either from an inbound or an outbound activity, right, we tend to refer to that as an INQ or an inquiry. As that gets handed off into marketing qualification, and marketing does the work to understand that it is a good quality lead that meets the actual requirements, then we use the term MQL to stamp it as high quality. Then we move on to sales qualification, and again, when sales has reviewed that lead and has determined that it does meet their requirements and it is ready to enter an active sales cycle, then we call that lead sales qualified, and that's SQL. And then last but not least, as we go through the process and hopefully end up with a closed-won business, we call that a closed lead. And so these become a little bit important as we go through this process because they're really going to be milestones and metrics that we're going to look to measure in order to understand how a lead is progressing through the waterfall. So you'll see things like MQL and SQL a number of times during this presentation. Now the next bit is the green boxes. And so the green boxes are really the stages that have to do with the acceptance of the lead. Now in the scenario that we heard about at the beginning of this call, part of the problem that was happening there is that marketing was sending leads to sales, and there was no sense of formal acceptance at all. As you saw in that scenario, sales had gotten leads but probably hadn't done that follow-up call or even really looked at them because they weren't even aware of, what that email was or had lost it somewhere. So the sales accepted lead stage becomes a critical milestone that you need to have in place. And what's happening here is that sales is taking a lead from marketing, and they're not yet trying to determine whether or not it's the lead to enter the active sales cycle. All they're doing at the sales accepted lead stage is trying to determine whether or not that lead meets the lead criteria that they asked marketing for. So it infers that marketing and sales have sat down, they've agreed to, here's what a good lead must have, and then when it gets sent over to sales at that SAL stage, sales is going to tick off the boxes and say, yes, this meets the agreed upon criteria, and there will be a responsibility included in that stage that sales will follow up on that lead within a certain amount of days, hours. Typically, that's something like 24 to 48 hours in terms of a follow-up time. So that's the importance of a sales accepted lead stage. If we move on, in the marketing qualification box, I've added a second green, which is a teleprospecting accepted lead. In many companies, we're actually starting to see the introduction of teleprospecting as a function that takes leads that come in through inbound or outbound methods and helps to progress them, helps to add some of that detail. And why is that? Well, as we actually agree a sales accepted lead handoff point with sales, marketing needs a way to help mature leads that aren't quite at that stage yet. And so a lot of companies are actually putting in place that teleprospecting function in order to fill in some of those details by following up on a lead and giving that company or that individual a call and obtaining some additional details that they can add to the lead record. Now, a lot of teleprospecting teams that are in place also complain about spending a lot of time calling numbers that are either incorrect or leads that turn out to be not leads. Perhaps they're students just trying to do some research or they're competitors trying to get information. And so it's important as you look to make that teleprospecting function more and more efficient that they also have the opportunity to have an acceptance stage. And so the teleprospecting accepted lead stage, or TAL, is where teleprospecting is going to have the opportunity to define a set of criteria that they want in a lead before they're going to accept it. And so they'll check off the items and they'll say, yes, this is a strong lead that I'm ready to follow up on as a teleprospector. And then they can go ahead and start doing those calls. Now that leads to another box that I've added on here, which is the automated qualified leads, or the AQL. As you actually start getting more and more stringent, working your way up this demand waterfall, you start having the situation where inquiries that are coming in at the top of the funnel that aren't quite ready or mature enough or meet the criteria to go into teleprospecting have no place to go. But they are good leads and you spent good money to get them. And so a lot of companies are investing in a marketing automated platform that can help them actually do automated criteria qualification of those leads to understand, are they good leads? And if they're not quite at the maturity level yet, can put in place automated nurturing in order to continue to nurture that lead and get it up to the point where it meets a quantitative lead score. And the minute it meets that lead score, it knows that it's met the criteria that teleprospecting was asking it for, and it can automatically send that lead on to teleprospecting. And so it automates the process of ensuring that what's being sent to teleprospecting is a good and strong lead based on what was agreed. And so the important milestones that we're looking at here, if you remember, at the top is inquiry, and we usually denote that as INQ. The automated qualified leads, AQLs, onto TALs for accepted leads from teleprospecting, onto TQLs, SALs, and SQLs. And those become milestones, as I said, that we're going to continue to track as we look at waterfall performance. Now, if you can see, I've added some orange boxes on here. And this is very much about the reality that when you put in place a teleprospecting team, they may not be spending 100% of their time working on inbound leads. they also may have targets for self-generated leads, typically done through outbound calling. Now, in some cases, marketing puts in place a demand waterfall that doesn't include those tele-generated leads or those self-generated leads. And we find that that's a mistake. And the reason for that is if you exclude those leads, you will not have one waterfall that gives you a view of all of the leads that are going through the pipeline, allowing you to compare velocities and performance between leads that are coming in through marketing campaigns and efforts, as well as leads that are being created by teleprospecting. And so it's important to have that in the waterfall, as well as it's important that those telegenerated leads be held to the same standards of lead quality as the marketing leads, so that when you're comparing the two, you are comparing apples and apples. Now on this slide, I've added the blue boxes that you can see towards the bottom left. Same sort of concept as with the teleprospecting, but now we're talking about sales. And as we all know, sales regularly do generate their own leads through the networking and conversations that they have with prospects or clients at different events or in different situations. And again, it is important that these be included in the demand waterfall reporting and view, so that you are able to see a full view of that pipeline and, again, compare performance between marketing qualified leads as well as sales-generated leads and tele-generated leads. One of the most common issues that we find is that companies have sales teams that are perhaps not willing to enter their opportunities into this type of system until perhaps a week before that deal is about to close. I'm sure that's not happening in any of your organizations. However, if it is, or you know of an organization where that is happening, we tend to call that sandbagging, then this type of process helps root that out and encourage people to put things in, again, to meet the same quality standards as they would for a marketing qualified lead and a lead that they're getting from teleprospecting as well. And then towards the bottom, you can now see in that close phase, right, again, we have the blue, the red, and the orange. And so it's not just important to be able to compare the performance of different lead sources at that SQL phase. It's also important to be able to report on, again, what percentage of each of those sources actually progressed all the way through to close. And that gives you a way to understand and compare the different sources, as well as plan appropriately based on where you think the bulk of those leads will be coming from. Lastly, if we move up to the inquiry phase, I've split that red box at the top into inbound and outbound. And I've done that because today organizations are starting to split their marketing budget between those two sets of activity. And it's important to be able to understand what your return on investment is for each kind of activity. And so being able to say, as a lead comes in, that it's come in through an inbound source versus an outbound source, again, will give you the ability to see how it's progressing all the way through, what the cost of that lead was, and how many of them have actually closed one. So you can see we're almost there now, and we just have, one or two more things to go. If you can see now, I've added a yellow arrow to the right-hand side of the demand waterfall, and that's what we call the route around arrow. And it's going straight from that automated qualified lead or from your marketing automation platform all the way to that green sales accepted leads box. So what's that about? Well, again, in some cases, you will want to have a lead that comes in, and rather than go through the standard process, sales says, I want that lead right now. And there are a couple of situations where that's the right thing to do. Some examples of that would be things like global accounts, where you have a global account strategy and you have an inquiry that comes in from someone within that global account, perhaps not in a region that you've sold into, but in another region that you have been trying to get into. Then the account team for that, the sales team, absolutely will want to see that name the minute it comes in, so that they can actually pick up the phone and start talking to that individual. They're the person that has a lot of the context around that global account, and so they're able to put that conversation into context rather than treating that prospect as an unknown individual. Another example could be a strategic target account, where perhaps you don't have that company as a customer yet, but they are part of your top 100 prospects that you're trying to get into. again, when you see that come through, that might be something that sales says, I want to know about that right away, because they have more of the context and are able to speak to that lead a bit more contextually. Now, the one thing I will say about that root around, though, is it really shouldn't be more than about 10%. So it should be the exception and not the rule. And that's it. So this is the demand waterfall, ta-da, in all of its glory. And as you can see, what it's really emphasizing there is that there is clarity between sales and marketing on the different phases that a lead goes through as it goes through the business, the different responsibilities that both marketing and sales have as it goes through and touches all of those teams. And we've also created a way through those milestones of measuring the progress of a lead as it goes all the way through. So we now have a way and data that we can use to answer that CEO's question in the scenario that Lasse gave us at the beginning of the call. Now, to try and relate this waterfall perhaps to the day-to-day activities that you see within your marketing team, we map the what we call the 5 waterfall-based jobs, marketing jobs, onto this demand waterfall in this slide. Let's start with seed. So as I said, seed is where you use things like social media or advertising or PR in order to seed that awareness and that understanding of your company so that hopefully you're bringing people to you. And that would create things that come in at the top of the funnel through the inquiry phase. In the create function, which is typically what we call demand creation, here's where you have a number of campaigns that are trying to drive those inquiries to a lead that meets the quality and criteria that has been agreed with teleprospecting and sales. And so most of those activities get lumped into marketing qualification. Third, we've got accelerate. And accelerate could be marketing activities that are in support of sales. Could be events, for example, to opportunities that are currently in the sales pipeline. But you're trying to close that deal faster, or maybe get that deal over some known humps. And a good way to do that could be through a webinar. It could be through a face-to-face event, or some other types of networking activities. And so accelerate activities typically go between sales qualification and that close phase. On the right-hand side, we actually have nurture. And nurture really can happen at all parts of this waterfall. So you can have marketing nurturing leads as they come in before that automated qualified lead phase. And that would be a situation where perhaps someone has come in and just had one interaction, they've downloaded one white paper or attended one event or webinar, and you're trying to drive more activity and gather more information about that individual so that they can be understood to meet your lead criteria and your lead score. It can also happen between sales accepted and sales qualified. Again, it might be that a lead gets to sales and they do accept it, but then for one reason or another, sales has to disqualify it. Perhaps it's not the right time frame, perhaps they don't have enough budget, or perhaps the prospect has just stopped responding and gone AWOL. And so there are what we call nurture, active recycle types of nurture streams that can help actually get a lead there on track as well. And then towards the bottom of the funnel, often you have leads that for one reason or another get into an active sales cycle, but then have to be closed lost. So there are also nurture streams that marketing runs at that point in order to try and re-engage with that lead. And so that's the way nurture activities map onto the different stages of this funnel. And then last but not least, you have enable. And enable is really all the functions that marketing undertakes in order to support sales in that conversation with that lead, so that when sales receives a lead from marketing and progresses it to an active pipeline stage, they're not starting the conversation again from scratch. They're actually using some of the tools and some of the information based on how that lead was created in order to further that conversation and further engage the prospect. So that's how the different job families map onto the waterfall, and hopefully that makes the waterfall, for those of you who are saying that you've never heard the demand waterfall before, hopefully that makes it a little bit more familiar to you.
Elizabeth, I have a question here that I think might fit into to the stage that you're in right now. Now, naturally, this is a very B2B oriented sales and marketing process with sales departments, etc. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how the demand waterfall could be used in a B2C scenario, also where this is not directly related with the sales organization? You have maybe a few comments on that?
Sure, absolutely. It's absolutely true that this waterfall is created predominantly for in a B2B world. However, we are actually finding more and more companies are moving into this type of process in a B2C world as well. And typically the benefits of that are, again, some way to handle and quantify and classify the sheer volume of leads that people are getting when they're trying to go ahead and market to the consumer base. And so if you can imagine it, in the consumer world, right, the inbound component of this waterfall would probably overtake the outbound component. There probably wouldn't be a lot of outbound calling per se, but it would be mainly generated through inbound activities, and driving people to their website, and then trying to get them to convert through that website. And maybe it's for an online shopping experience, or maybe it's for actually having a conversation with an in-office-based representative. So really the top of the funnel would be a lot larger. It would be dominated by inbound activities rather than outbound, but still the other steps would, I think, apply. You would have quite a lot of emphasis on that AQL stage in order to really try and make sure that your inside sales reps, your tele reps, are focusing on specifically the consumers that are of most urgent interest to you right now, and they continue to be effective. And then, perhaps those teleprospecting or inside sales reps could actually close the deal themselves, or maybe if it's a consumer but it's a more high-value type of purchase, maybe those would be passed on to an actual sales representative. So that's how it would shift a little bit from a B2C world.
Okay, I have another question that might also fit in here. There's actually two questions, but Henrik Notlev, you asked about systems and functions, and I'll cover that after Elizabeth's presentation, how systems interline with this process, because naturally arrows and PowerPoints is nice and easy, but we have to make data and everything be seamlessly integrated on the back end, and I'm going to cover that a little bit later in the presentation. But we had another question for you, Isabel, which was maybe if you could just do a quick differentiation between inbound and outbound inquiries, just examples of what could be an inbound and what could be an outbound.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And so in easy definitions, I would say anything that is an activity done by your company to an unnamed group of people. So it's not addressed to a particular individual, right? It's something that you put out there to be seen by a large group of people. That qualifies as inbound. Anything that you are actually addressing to a specific person, so it could be an email that you're addressing to a specific person, it could be a phone call, it could be a direct mail piece, right? All of those qualify as outbound activities. And so that's sort of the easiest way to differentiate between the two. So examples of an inbound type of inquiry could be perhaps you have a banner or you have a search engine marketing banner on Google. Someone clicks on that, comes to your web page, and then from that they fill out a form that you see when someone downloads a white paper, for example. That would be an example of an inbound inquiry. Whereas an outbound inquiry, perhaps that's your teleprospecting team is actually interested in targeting a group of people. They do some work to profile a group of names. They come to marketing and say, please, can you email this group of names for me? And so you have a defined list of names and addresses, and you mail to those people, and they respond to that email and come in and say maybe they've downloaded something or something like that. But that would be an outbound inquiry coming into the demand funnel. Does that help?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Listen, thank you for the questions. I think that's great, and keep them coming, absolutely. So let's, if we're ready to move on, let's go on from there. Hold on one second. Just having a little bit of trouble advancing to the next slide. There we go. Okay, let's talk a little bit now about the demand waterfall measurement, because as the example that we saw at the beginning of this session proved, that CEO, he wants to know, what am I getting, right? And so is this yielding any results? And so part of the beauty of the demand waterfall is the alignment that it brings between sales and marketing behind that measurement. So they can both agree that they understand how those leads are progressing and if they are yielding something. Now, the very first and most important part of being able to answer the CEO's question is that timestamp. And that's going on behind the scenes when you implement the demand waterfall. And so as we talked about those different milestones that I called out on that demand waterfall, so inquiry for INQ, automated qualified lead, tele-accepted lead, tele-qualified lead, sales accepted lead, sales qualified lead, and closed won, we're going to be time-stamping those leads as they hit each and every one of those milestones. So typically what we see is this type of scenario is set up in a well-defined way within a Salesforce automation platform. And then each stage of acceptance and each stage of progress is actually officially done with the system and then behind the scenes time-stamped, so that a report can be generated actually showing the life of that lead as it's gone all the way through. Moving on from there, that actually gives us the ability to run a number of different analysis metrics. And here's 3 of the most critical ones that you'll run. The first one is volume, and that relates to what do I currently have at each stage of the waterfall. So how many leads do I currently have sitting within, maybe it's AQL or maybe it's TAL or SAL. And so you can understand for all of those leads that marketing perhaps sent across to sales in that example, where are they sitting? Has sales even accepted them yet? Or have they accepted them but not yet qualified them yet? Very quick way to answer your question rather than feeling that those marketing leads are going into a black hole. The second one is the conversion rate, and that's where we're going to see for every single stage of that demand waterfall how many are progressing to the next stage and how many are failing to progress, or either being taken out of the pipeline or perhaps being stagnant within that stage. And that's going to help us understand exactly how effective those leads are when they come in. And if it's actually a problem in terms of a conversion rate between marketing qualified lead at the top onto where we hand over to sales, then marketing has some information that it can use to try and pinpoint where that problem might be, go to those individuals and say, what is the problem with the quality at this point? What can I do to make that conversion rate better? And then last but not least is velocity, and that's how quickly is a lead going through the pipeline and coming out at the other end, the closed won opportunity. And here, when I was making the comment about being able to compare marketing versus tele versus sales generated leads, this is one of those places where typically we start to see velocity come in, where you're looking at saying, okay, based on those 3 lead sources, which of these is actually going through the pipeline faster? You can also do the same for an inbound versus an outbound marketing source lead. Which of those is going through the actual pipeline faster? One example that I would give you is in a previous role that I had as VP of Marketing for EMEA. I was having trouble getting buy-in for budget towards inbound marketing activities. When I was able to go to my demand waterfall and prove to them that the inbound activities that we were getting were actually of the exact same deal size value, but they were on average closing about 1 month faster than an outbound lead, I immediately got the support and the budget that I wanted. So just an example of where velocity actually helps you achieve your goals. If we move on from there, the last comment that I'll make with regard,
but just one quick second here. We're running a little bit out of time, so for anybody that has to attend another meeting, it will probably be 5 minutes, 10 minutes until we're completely done with the webinar for today. If you have to leave the webinar by now, then you will receive the full recorded version afterwards. But hope you tag along with us for about 5-10 minutes yet. So please continue, Isabel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and my apologies for running over, but as Lasse says, we'll be done in about 5 minutes. Thank you. The last comment that I'll make here with regards to things that you can do with the demand waterfall when you put it in place is you are then able to apply filters so that you can compare and contrast perhaps different business units, different geographies, different customer types. Again, that'll help you understand which of these has the better conversion rates, which one has the better velocities, and maybe even which ones have most of the volume where you might need to generate some more volume for some long forgotten geographies. Okay, so if we go on to the last couple of slides, this is just for all of those that said they were starting to implement the demand waterfall. What are some of those key considerations? Well, the first one is you have to prepare a careful project plan because a demand waterfall implementation really can't happen within 1 week, but it can certainly happen within 6 months. And the key is to build in enough time at the front end to really properly define the project, you gain that buy-in that you need, capture the requirements of the business process. So what does a good lead look like for tele? What does a good lead look like for sales? So that when you get to the deployment phase, you can do that quickly. It's also important to make sure you anticipate and secure some IT resources and some time for testing and documentation of any new systems that are going to have to be implemented. If you're not quite there yet, but you're still trying to make the case for your company to actually adopt something like the demand waterfall, then there's a couple of hints that I would have for you. The first is to identify the problem and secure commitment up front. And it's important that the functional leaders between sales and marketing really have to agree on the problem and agree that it can be solved so that you have that commitment to go through this process. Second, you need to set clear business objectives, and each one of those business drivers, if you like, that you see on the right-hand side really need to be linked back to that pain point, as well as really need to sort of understand how they can be factored into the mission of your company, how they're helping your overall goals. The third one is you need to establish a universal context. And so what I mean by that is as you go through this implementation and you go through making the case for it, it can't just be marketing driving the bus. It can't be just sales driving the bus, because if that happens, you risk the problem or the situation that sales or marketing, the one who wasn't involved, views that process as not something that they care about or not something they're invested in. And then last but not least, it's important to identify the risk that introducing change is going to bring to both sales and marketing. People don't like to have their worlds disrupted, and this process does introduce a number of different milestones and cultural changes in terms of accountability. So it's important to be able to allocate time to address those issues through communication and training. Last but not least is it's important to be able to identify the critical key stakeholders that are going to need to be involved in the process. Starting with appointing executive sponsorship. I have yet to see a demand waterfall adoption that succeeds without the support top-down. So ideally, the CMO and the the CSO would serve as co-sponsors to this type of initiative. Two is appoint a cross-functional project team to actually define all of the requirements, the milestones, the definitions, as well as the service level agreements for each of those handoff points. Make sure it's not dominated by one team, but again, everyone is fairly represented. And then the very last bit is waterfall performance steering team. That may seem a bit weird in that saying that the team that's actually going to be responsible for reporting on performance of the demand waterfall needs to be involved in the planning, but it's important that they are involved up front and can provide you with the requirements for what they are going to need to be able to report on and measure. So that's built in from day one. Often I see people forget some of those reporting requirements, and that just leads to more work later. I had another polling question, but I think in the interest of time, Lasse, I'll just skip to the next slide if that's okay with you.
Definitely.
And this is just some common pitfalls to avoid. Again, just really quickly, I'm quite happy to speak with anybody longer term about what some of those might be. But one of them is partisanship. I think we touched on that already. Make sure it's driven jointly by sales and marketing so that one person isn't overly biasing the process and the requirements. Two is spend a lot of time on the actual system definitions and requirements so that you don't have to do a lot of rework later. The third one is data governance. avoid underestimating the ongoing commitment to performance analysis this is going to take. You are going to need somebody focused on generating the reports in terms of understanding the performance through the demand waterfall so that you can really answer the CEO's question on an ongoing basis. And the last one is sustainability. It's really easy to rally a team for a short term, much harder when you actually have to create that needed discipline and culture for the long run. So make sure that you're thinking about not just the launch of this process, but also how you're going to continue to reinforce and support it as the weeks and the months and the years roll on. And that's really it for me. I mean, some action items that I would leave you with. If you're just at that early stage where you're thinking about rolling out something like the demand waterfall, then I would suggest you go ahead and socialize the concepts that we've talked about here with your executive leadership and with your sales stakeholders to see what the appetite is for trying to use the demand waterfall to solve that alignment problem between marketing and sales. And then from a sales perspective, if I have any sales folks on the phone, right, really I would encourage you to consider what the requirements are for qualifying leads from your perspective. The more clarity that you can give to the marketing team in terms of what you actually need in a lead, the better able marketing is going to be to fulfill that requirement, and you can use those definitions to actually start driving the first version of a demand waterfall within your company. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Isabel. It was a super presentation. If you could give me back the presenter rights, that would be fantastic. So I pick it up myself here. There we go. So appreciate the time, Isabel, and I hope all of you found this interesting. As I mentioned before, we will be supplying this webinar for review as an online version. But you know, from listening to you, Isabel, and the process that we have, and especially if you think about a slide like this and more arrows coming, yellow arrows coming on the slides, maybe somebody sits back and thinking, you know, how do I actually convert this into something that can be reality? And I think you gave a very good point, Isabel, on how these projects like this often start out with really getting the management attention and the conceptual understanding of how this is actually done. But there's also a part of this which involves technology, because as I also mentioned when we had the questions, that PowerPoints are really nice, and you know, we can create a lot of cool stuff on these sort of slides, but really getting this to work in reality is also about integrating platforms and making sure that data is available to really support the concept that we've discussed. And some of the platforms, if you think about the presentation that Isabel has just given, that you will have something that is above the funnel, which be your CMS platforms or social platforms or whatever it might be. We'll have something in the middle, or need something in the middle, that will be an automation platform to really drive the marketing qualification. And in the bottom of this, you will need a sales automation platform like a CRM system, etc. And these platforms will need to be integrated to really make this work. Now, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be picked up just by starting to have this dialogue internally in your company. And so if you want to start out with something like this, as Isabel has also said, there's a few things that you need to do. First of all, you need to look at the demand waterfall as a framework and as a process definition. So this is something we can work with in our company if you're a B2B company. With that said, we need to start aligning organizations to sort of the new world. And the effectiveness that you get out of working with the demand waterfall is really, really impressive. I mean, we had one question that I have not popped up here. If somebody, I don't remember the name of this viewer, that asked if there was some documentation on people that is working with the demand waterfall and people that are not working with processes like the demand waterfall, and what effect that can have. And we'll supply you some information around that also once we send out the link to the recorded version of the webinar. But you can really gain amazing results. And one of the reasons for that is that you get insight. So right now we're investing money in our marketing and sales processes, generating new leads, but we're not really sure if we're investing the money in the right parts of the funnel, because we don't know which part of the funnel that is you know, that has holes in it, or is not converting correctly, or is taking too long time on velocity, etc. And the last thing is naturally to get your hands on technology that really supports that integrated sales and marketing journey. And funny enough, that's exactly our business. So we have 35 resources that does nothing else than implement technology and work with processes in marketing organizations. So if you find this this interesting, what we've discussed today in this session, we have a 3 hour one hour free session that we can conduct with you guys with one of our marketing specialists and try to take the demand waterfall and the concepts of the demand waterfall and align that with your organization and the situation that you are in. So feel free to reach out to me directly on my email. Just send me a mail and I'll hook you up with one of our marketing specialists and we can have a discussion on how could this actually be adopted in your organization. So with that said, we've come to the end of the webinar. Apologies for going a little bit over time. Yeah, so we have a new webinar scheduled also. We run these series of webinars just about once a month, once every second week. 22nd of October, we're going to set some focus on how do we then actually spot and convert the hot leads. Talking about lead scoring possibilities and those sort of different things. When you sign up for this webinar, we also get 3 guides on data management, lead scoring processes, nurturing processes, etc. So you are welcome to sign up for that on one of our local sites on IncreaseDK or SE or NO, and hope to see you on that session. Now we do have a couple of questions here still, so we'll keep the lines open. If you have a question, just type them into the question list. So we have a question here from Michael. How do you advise new businesses to get a head start with preparing for demand waterfall structure? Imagine it will be far bigger implementation if we wait until we become a bigger and established business. So Michael, I guess you're asking about the smaller companies. Is that correct? Yes, entrepreneurs. So Isabel, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on, does it take a certain size of business to really engage in the demand waterfall, or would that be for anybody?
Honestly, I would say it's for anyone. We actually have a service that focuses exclusively on small companies that are just starting out and helps them implement these types of best practice processes. And the demand waterfall is a perfect example of that. So we have lots of customers that are at that beginning part of their journey. And what I would say is, it's actually easier for smaller companies, exactly as the person asking the question said. It's easier to get agreement between sales and marketing on some of the key handover points and criteria when you're that size. Once you get bigger, you're multinational, it becomes a lot more onerous. So, I mean, some tips that I would say, first of all, absolutely, I think now is a good time to start. 2, I'd say there are, certainly some, in terms of the systems that Lasse, you showed, there are certainly some entry-level marketing automation platforms and Salesforce automation platforms that are absolutely aimed at small companies and are affordable and can be used very easily to implement this type of waterfall process. And then 2, start having the conversation between marketing and sales on, let's define what a good lead looks like. The more specific you can be about that, the better. And then agree responsibilities between marketing and sales. When you send something to sales, how quickly will they review it, and then how quickly will they follow up? That's what I'd say as a starting point.
Super. Thank you. Okay, guys, if you have no other questions, I hope you got a good inspiration to how you could address the issue of aligning sales and marketing, and especially the ability of documenting the effect of what we're actually investing in the sales and marketing processes. Demand waterfall is definitely a direction. Now it is a journey, naturally, as you can see from the slides. It doesn't start out by being in place from day one. But it really starts out with having the discussions internally. And feel free to reach out to us if you find this interesting and want to engage more in this topic. With that said, I hope you all had a good set of inspirations here, and I see it's noon, which means that it's almost lunchtime. So I do not want to keep you any longer for that. I'm glad you all joined. So thank you very much, and stay tuned for our next webinar on the 22nd of October. Have a fantastic day, guys.